My name's Ray Chegwin. I work for the Knowledge Transfer Network. I've got some colleagues helping out today, so please stand. John, Jonathan, Natasha, Naz, and you all, and Ash at the back, and you all have met Natasha at the front desk. Just a quick reminder for those of you who want to one-to-one sessions with Innovate UK and LCEDN and KTN this afternoon. Can you please see Natasha either during the break or lunch, and then you book a time slot with Natasha. There's no fire test today, so I was reliably told. But it was a good job I was told how to open the fire doors, otherwise we'd still be in here. So, but I think you know the drill now. Anyway, if you hear the fire alarm, it's down either those stairs or these stairs here, down to the bottom onto Cannon Street, turn left and down to the bottom, and we congregate by the Apple store or in the middle of the road like we did before. So the facilities are just outside and to the left. Food will be served, and coffee's been served all day, by the way, so help yourself to coffee outside there, and food will be served just outside the glass doors as well. Phones, please, can you please switch to silent or turn them off? I've just done mine. I'm feeling quite smug now, so I usually forget mine. If you've all got, I don't know if those of you who've completed your give-get cards, we found these are a really good way to sort of share information on what you can do and what you're looking for. Again, hand them into Natasha, and we'll probably, we will display them. I think there's some over there, but we can display them throughout the day. And then they'll go online and they'll be shared after the event as well. Other than that, just to say that we've all the information, the slides, the recording, the webcast, all the give-cat cards, all the information will be shared with you. Natasha will send you a link in due course. All that's left for me to do now is really go quickly through the agenda. I'll be speaking just for a few minutes on how KTN can help you on this competition and in wider, and then Alice from Innovate UK will be giving an introduction to the competition. Then we'll have Ed Brown from LCEDN, Loughborough University, giving an overview of that and also talking about gender and social diversity. Then we're looking forward to seeing David Atkin from the Carbon Trust, and he'll be talking about transforming energy access, and he's talking specifically about the scope of this competition. Then we thought it was probably time, because you had lots of slides and lots of information, so have a quick comfort break at that point. And then Julie will go through the eligibility and competition process. That should bring us to 12:30. Where there'll be time for Q&A. What I should have said as well is welcome to our people joining via the webcast. Please make yourselves known via the chat box to Jonathan, and please feel free to type in any questions that you may have, and we'll do our best to come round to everybody in the room, but also to the webcast questions as well. There'll be plenty of time for networking over lunch. And then we've got Martin from SolarPack in to give us a case study. We always like to invite somebody to give a bit of an overview of one of the projects that's been funded previously, not just to show what great work they've been doing on the project, but also to talk people who are not so familiar with the Innovate UK competition process and how it all works. He can talk to you about that as well. And then for those of you who've wanted to make a pitch, a short 2-minute pitch, you would have sent your slides, of course, into Natasha, and we'll have those slides here. And then we'll have a pitching session in the afternoon. And then, as I say, 14:30, 2:30, we'll start the one-to-ones. You're free to go then. You're free to stay around networking. Coffee will still be available, so please make the most of your time here. Make lots of new faces, lots of potential partners. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the Knowledge Transfer Network, KTN, we're funded from via BAYS through Innovate UK, and we're the innovation network along with the EEN and the catapults. I think somebody from the Engineering Energy Systems Catalogue might be here today. There you go, welcome. So what we're about is inviting people like yourselves into a room like this or online to actually discuss your ideas, your innovations, and we connect you with people that you want to connect with, and we also connect you with funding, and it could be via as I say, an event like this in support of a specific competition, or it could be because you want other ideas of funding, and we can help you in that way. And the whole idea behind that, of course, is to help the UK prosper, to help us innovate quicker and improve the wealth of the economy. So, as I say, we help you find expertise, we help you demonstrate your expertise, find other expertise, other partners and other markets. This is a prime example of finding opportunities in another market. Just to say, I'm the lead for nuclear energy in KTN. So again, I get a lot of contacts via my colleagues saying there's a company in aerospace who's thinking about moving into nuclear. They've got this technology. Will it work? And I can help connect and have a chat with them. That's how it all works. As mentioned as well, access to funding and financing, not through just these Innovate UK competitions, but other routes to funding and finance as well. This is it in numbers. We're more of a sectorial based organisation, so we have John in the room, John Ransford, who's our offshore wind expert, and Naz on energy storage. Jonathan's our water and wastewater expert, but you name a sector, and we'll probably have somebody who's leading that community and helping pull things together. We put on a lot of events like this. Last year, I think it was 23,000 delegates attended our events, and we reckoned over 6,000 business introductions were made last year. I'll say something more about our newsletter in a moment, but I think the real strength of KTN is of course our network. Over 40,000, I think last time I looked, I think there was 55,000, but don't quote me on that. But over 40,000 organisations in our network and over 130,000 individuals from all walks of life, from all sectors. So if you want to find somebody with a specific expertise, then please do get in touch. We offer a free and confidential service. As I say, we're funded via Innovate UK to help you guys. And it could be an event like this, or it could be about other funding or other competition information. When you go away today, if you still think you'd like to find a partner to bid for this competition, then again, please do get in touch, and we'll do our utmost to find somebody with the specific expertise that you're looking for. We can also help with reviewing your applications, so we will not write them for you, but given the time, and please don't send them the day before the deadline, but given a week or so's notice, then we'd be happy to review your application. A lot of the people in KTN, of course, very familiar with the Innovate UK application process, and they can just give a fresh pair of eyes sort of view to say, have you really answered this? Have you really provided the information here? So a lot of people find that helpful. Go to our website, lots more information there, and to remain connected with us, those of you who like social media, we're tweeting all the time, so please follow us on Twitter. And on LinkedIn, we have, I think, about 23 groups. So obviously, energy at KTN would be a good one for this. But wherever your interest, go to the KTN website, click on the newsletter to receive a bespoke newsletter. If you click on that link, you will be asked, what's your specific area of interest? It might be energy, it might be transport, it might be space, it might be agri-tech. Whatever it is, please join up, and then you'll get, as I say, a bespoke newsletter with details of news, events and funding in your areas of interest. Right, that's me done. I'd now like to invite Alice to give an overview of the competition. Thanks, Alice.
Morning, everyone. Hello to everyone on the webcast. For everyone in the room, congratulations on surviving the fire alarm. You passed the first test, well done. Before I start, I just want to find out, in the room, sorry for the people on the webcast, this is not going to be very interactive for you, but in the room, who's known of Innovate UK before today? I'm assuming everyone. Who hasn't heard of Innovate UK before today? One. Brilliant. Oh, two. A few. Okay, this is good. Who's applied for an Innovate UK grant before? Most of you. Who's been successful? And who's applied for an Energy Catalyst one? Less people. And been successful? Okay, that's good. Sorry, it's just good to understand who's in the room, what you know and what you don't. So Innovate UK is the UK's innovation agency, and what we're here to do is to get early stage technology to market as quickly as possible, ultimately to create productivity and economic viability for the UK. We do this through a number of different kind of mechanisms. Energy Catalyst, which is the competition you're here today to talk about, is one of those mechanisms. And it was set up by Derek Allen. Derek, do you want to wave? About 4 years ago. So if you've got questions, he's a good person to go to. And the idea was that we wanted to create a single kind of competition structure that you could apply into to get your technology from very early stage to late stage that was kind of always open, always available, always similar. This worked really well. We've had 5 rounds of it so far. And that's been about a total of nearly £100 million worth of public grant funding. And this means since in these 5 rounds, we've supported over 250 projects, and it's about 700 organisations. Obviously, some of you are here today. But the best thing about Energy Catalyst is it facilitates co-funding. And we've had co-funding from a number of different people. So Innovate UK put money in for the first 4 rounds. EPSRC has been putting money in for every single round so far. Then we had some money from DEC, which of course became BEID, which is the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And most recently, DFID have been putting money in, and it's DFID and EPSRC that are funding round 6. So obviously, with the change of co-funders, with DFID coming on board, this round is primarily focused on transforming energy access, hence the slight change in title. And the idea is to support early stage testing and scale up of innovation technologies and business models that accelerate access to affordable clean energy-based services to poor households and enterprises in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. What does it actually mean? So the Energy Catalyst round 6, we have got up to £10 million to spend on this round. As mentioned, though it's one competition, it's kind of like 3, because we have 3 strands to it. We have an early, a mid and a late strand. So all same scope, but slightly different eligibility, which I'll go through. To be in scope for it, as always with the Energy Catalyst, your project has to meet the energy trilemma. And that means you have to do both energy security, make energy low cost, make energy low carbon. And with the introduction of DFID money, it means that we also have to take into account the Transforming Energy Access Programme. So it means that you have to focus on the energy access needs of both Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And new for this round, because it's overseas development aid, we're having to take into account gender equality and social inclusion requirements as well. That doesn't mean you have to be the bee's knees at social inclusion at the start. It just means that you have to appreciate that there's a need for it and that you have a plan going forward as part of your project. I will explain each of these bits a bit more in a minute. So, like I said, £10 million. This is broken down by multiple co-funders. So £2 million is coming from EPSRC. They are there to focus on scientific excellence. This means they're funding academics. So if you're an academic in the room and you hit the EPSRC requirements, you're probably going to get funded by them. Then we've got £8 million from the Department for International Development. And this is broken up into 2 bits. So we've got £5 million from the Transforming Energy Access Programme, which is focusing on the requirements of Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. We've also been given an additional £3 million from their bioenergy pot, and they're focusing on the needs of Sub-Saharan Africa. So it means that while all bioenergy that meets the rest of the scope is in scope, if you happen to be in scope for the bit on bioenergy money, you've got a bit more money to play with in terms of if you're likely to get funding or not. And to repeat, no Innovate UK money is in this round. It is just DFID and EPSRC. So, as I said, there's 3 streams, and each one has a very slightly different eligibility. Julie Brown from our competitions team will be going through this later, but I just wanted to give you a bit of context before we talk more about the scope and some of the gender requirements that Ed and David are going to be talking about later. So though this is run as 3 competitions, there's only a single competition entry point, so you all access the competition through the same point in place. So the early stage kind of strand is basically focusing on feasibility studies. And what we mean by this is kind of lab-based work, kind of evaluation of kind of fundamental research, and the project sizes are between 50k and 300k. And we're expecting these projects to be about 6 to 12 months long. To apply, SMEs, a UK SME is the only organisation that can apply on its own. If you're not a UK SME, you're going to have to collaborate, and that's why you're all here today. If you want to lead a project, you either have to be a UK SME or a UK RTO. And while we're not mandating international partners, we're highly encouraging them. And you are allowed to be an international partner from anywhere in the world if you want to partner in this competition. And a bit of a note, max 50% research participation. That means that if you're an academic or an RTO, the most you can combine to make up a total project is 50% for an early stage.
What's an RTO?
A research technology organisation.
Can you explain the difference between that and
This is my cop-out. Julie can. Academics at universities, research technology organisations are a slightly different state aid for the relevance. They tend to be things like our catapults and things like TWI and things like that. Ray it looks like he's turning it on.
No, just to say we're welcomes the odd question, but we're trying to, for the benefit of the webcast, they will pick up the sound.
Can we take questions at the end just so I can get microphones around for the webcast? Thank you. For a mid-stage project, we're basically looking for industrial research. And this means that you're looking at making components, doing a bit of evaluation, that kind of activity. We're looking for project sizes between 50k and 1.5 million, and we're expecting projects to be between 12 and 24 months. These mid-stage and late-stage projects must be collaborative. Even if you're a UK SME, you cannot go alone. You have to do collaborative research and development. It must be led by UK business, and at least some of the work has to be carried out in country, and by that we mean Sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia. We're encouraging international partners, but we're not requiring it, and a max is 30% research participation. And for the late stage, very similar to the mid, other than it's focused on experimental development, which means kind of demonstration projects, 50k to £3 million in project costs, 12 to 30 months in length. You might want to note on this that if you've applied previously for a late stage project in Energy Catalyst, you could apply up to 36 months. Because of the constraints we have around T and when we've got to spend the money, you're only allowed 30 months maximum, so please don't apply for 36 because it will rule you out straight away. It also must be led by UK business. Again, some work is going to have to happen overseas, and international partners are encouraged but not required, and again, max 30% research participation. And to field question before I get it, if your project covers multiple streams, and that's perfectly okay, you need to apply for the stream which the majority of your work falls into. So say you're doing a late stage demo project, you want to apply for late stage, but actually a component of your application is kind of early stage and you want to bring it up the TRL level. That's fine. That work package can be early stage and you can apply for the different funding mechanism, but within the late stage proposal. Scope overview. So I mentioned there's 3 bits to the scope. So to be in scope for this competition, you not only have to be tackling all areas of the energy trilemma, you need to look at the energy access needs of Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. You have to show how your project is helping to address and encourage gender equality and social inclusion. And again, if you want to be, though all bioenergy is in scope, if it hits the above criteria, if you want to be in scope for that £3 million of extra money we've got, you need to hit the requirements I'm going to talk about in a second. Energy trilemma. So as explained, the energy trilemma is to reduce emissions, improve security of supply, and reduce the cost of energy. You need to do this reasonably significantly, so it's not marginal, to be in scope, and you have to explain this in your application. Transforming energy access. David Atkin from the Carbon Trust is going to be going through this later. Your project must align with the T programme's priorities, and these are to speed up access to affordable, clean energy services for poor households and enterprises in Sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia. So gender. So Ed's going to talk about this later as well. But your application must take into account gender equality and social inclusion. You must identify the main beneficiaries of your project, who they are and what they're going to do. describe how you'll mitigate any negative effects or negative connotations that come from the project, and provide a plan of how to address both gender and social inclusion during the life of your project. And this means that we don't need to be experts now, but we just want you to understand what you need to do to get good at gender inclusion and equality by the end of the project. So as I mentioned, bioenergy, I'm going to repeat this a lot, all types of bioenergy that hit the 3 scope criteria are in scope, but if you want access to that £3 million, it's specifically reserved for transformative bioenergy technology and electricity and or heat between 10 kilowatt and 5 megawatt. To repeat, all other bioenergy is in scope if you want in that 5 million and the 2 million from EPSRC. If you want the £3 million from the bioenergy pot, so to increase your chances, this is the scope that you have to hit. And your project must address the needs of one of the following countries. It's Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, Ghana, Nigeria, Mozambique, South Africa, and Zambia. So outer scope. So basically anything opposite to what I've just said. So innovations that are unlikely to contribute to the energy trilemma, only contribute to a bit of the energy trilemma, don't take in the needs of energy access in Sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia, and projects that don't address gender and social equality. Also to note that though this is referenced on bioenergy on here, this is actually for all technology, we're not going to pay you to do a demo project just to do large-scale implementation of plant capacity. So if you've got a technology that's already really at market and you just want to install lots of them, not in scope. There has to be some innovation to be able for us to be able to fund your application. Again, just to repeat, international partners that are allowed, they can be from anywhere in the world, but they're not mandatory. But what is mandatory is work in Sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia for mid and late stage projects. And just a note, when you're on your application, we ask you to choose up to 3 technology areas. These are them. They're beautifully long and not particularly well worded, but there's 20 of them. As you might note, there is not one on bioenergy. There's a reason for this. We want to try and keep the tags that we're using the same across all 5 rounds of the energy all 6 rounds, I say, of the energy catalyst. There's ones on renewable heat and other ones which will be applicable, but we will be reading all of them and deciding which ones are in scope for the different pots of money that's around. The key dates. So the brief was published last week. Well done for turning up to the briefing event today. Sorted. The competition doesn't open until next week, so we're doing this quite early. The registration deadline is the 14th of November at noon. For those of you, how many of you have used a new IFS system? Only a couple. Okay, so this is being done through the old system of application forms. So while you apply through the IFS portal, you have to get the application form downloaded by the 14th of November to be able to submit it for the 21st. And again, deadlines are at noon. I implore people to put their applications in early. Julie will show you a slide later which says no matter how many times I say it, you will ignore me because everyone applies in the last hour. But please don't. We really appreciate if you got in early. And applicants will be informed in January of next year of if they've been successful or not. And we're expecting the earliest start dates to be the 1st of March. So that's it from me. We will be going through further scope detail and the gender a bit gender I think is coming up next. And we'll have a question and answer session right at the end. Is that right, Ray? Cool. If you have questions and scope questions, the best way is either to email me, but the better way to do it is email support. Mainly because if you send me a question, I have to email support anyway. And if you email support, they nag me after 24 hours if I haven't replied. So you basically get an answer a lot quicker. Cool. That's it from me. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, both in the room here and online. This was originally going to take place after the Carbon Trust has said everything about the Transforming Energy Access Programme, so please bear with me. Some of the things I'll refer back to, where I'm sure that David will speak about some of those aspects later on. I want to say I've been asked to do 3 things in 2 kind of sessions. The first is to say a little bit about the LCEDN and our kind of role in this area and some of the ways in which we've been working. Secondly, to say a bit about how we can and have been working in the energy catalyst arena, and also to talk about some of our experiences about running research projects in this kind of field and some of the challenges that are involved in running research projects in this kind of field. And finally, to say a few words on gender and social inclusion in terms of the introduction of those criteria into the energy catalyst process. So to begin with, what is the LCEDN? Well, there are several of us here today. It's John who's my colleague from Loughborough here, and Charlotte also works with us at Loughborough, and Harry, who's here as an intern with us at the moment. So there are four of us here, so do come and talk to us if there are issues that you want to discuss later on. Basically, we are the network that attempts to bring together the UK community of researchers that are working on energy and international development issues. We try and bring together people working from a very technological perspective with those working from a more social science, anthropological, geographical kind of perspective. However, we also work very, very closely with DFID. We've been one of the partners on the Transforming Energy Access project. We have helped run a variety of different research programs, and we also act as a kind of information portal. So basically, really to kind of explain what it is that we do, we try and act as a hub for bringing together those groups I've just been talking about. We try and actively promote new forms of knowledge, and that means not only technology development, but also how we can work together more effectively on a transdisciplinary kind of level. And we also try and connect the UK's communities working on these issues with the international communities that work in these fields globally. So what have we been doing? We have a directory of UK research expertise in this area, but used to be hosted on our previous website. We're in the process at the moment of updating that, and over the course of the next few weeks, we will be making that directory live. So if you are looking for research collaborators and so on, in the first instance, talk to us via email. There will be a resource that will be available to everyone that will be up on the website within the course of the next few weeks. Do make use of our website, LCEDN.com, which has a whole host of information about the things that we're involved in, a very active blog where we would welcome contributions from all kinds of colleagues that are working in this field. And we've been doing things like doing reviews of the existing evidence base. We've just produced a 60-page document for DFID, which is available on our website, which reviews all of the research expertise across a lot of these different areas in the UK, and looks at the place of the UK within the global community working on these issues. Over the years, we've done rapid evidence reviews in particular areas and helped to try and initiate new postgraduate courses and so on. Perhaps one of the things we're most well known for is running workshops and conferences and seminars on these kinds of themes. In the last 12 months, we'd run 2 large conferences, one at Durham and one at Loughborough, which are the 2 hubs of the LCEDN. The last one was held in May, which brought together around 150 people, quite a few people that were involved in previous energy catalyst projects, attended those, and I know that quite a number of you are here today or joining us online and have really, I think, made a lot of useful connections for partners working in southern countries that will be very helpful for this particular round of applications. Other things that we do, we run a series of monthly webinars on these kinds of topics with our colleagues in Smart Villages. You can see on here the kinds of topics and issues that we deal with. All of those are available to watch via YouTube, via the links on the Smart Villages and on the LCEDN website. One of the things I was asked to talk about today was our experiences in running a research program called the Sustainable Energy, Understanding Sustainable Energy Solutions program, the USES program. This is an ongoing research program between EPSRC, DFID and DEC as was. There's at least a couple of people involved in these projects in the room. Most of these projects have drawn to a conclusion now. There are still a couple of them that are ongoing, and we're currently in the midst of a review of the effectiveness of that particular research program. The idea of that research program will sound quite familiar to what we've been just talking about in relation to Energy Catalyst, in that these are projects that are multi-sectoral, so they bring together academics with people from industry, from NGOs, from community organisations. They have to be multidisciplinary, so you can't just work with technologists, you also have to work with social scientists and so on. And in general, in this particular case, they were also multi-country, so you're working in more than one country in the Global South. And they all had to involve a capacity building element in terms of the relationship with the Southern partners. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment or two. There were 13 of these projects. They worked in a whole number of different countries, and they dealt with a range of different issues. So some were technology projects, and some have actually given rise to Innovate energy catalyst projects after these initial stages. The Rice Straw project, which where's Craig? Over there, that project started from one of these uses projects and is now moved forward into commercial development. Other projects looking at cooling for agriculture, smart communication technologies, electric cooking, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but also deal with political policy challenges to do with community mobilisation. One of the projects that we've been involved in, and John's been very heavily involved in, is a project that's worked in Kenya and in Bangladesh around community energy at a nanogrid, small-scale community solar project, and so on and so forth. We've also been supporting DFID in the first stages of transforming energy access. The work that I was just talking about in terms of reviewing the current state of UK energy and development research has occurred through the Transforming Energy Access programme, and we're working at trying to encourage more collaboration, for example, between GCRF and Energy Catalyst and the other parts of the T programme, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the areas that we're currently working in. We've also, through the website, you can access a lot of the work that we've been doing on briefing papers and our publishing programme, and there's a lot of evidence from the work that we've been doing with a whole variety of different organisations that you can gain access to through our website. And we've had a series of partnerships. For example, one of the ones I'll talk about in a little while is the partnership with Energia, which is a network that focuses specifically on the impacts of energy developments for women. So that's, I think, a very important partnership that we should be talking about later on today. Finally, what are we doing in relation to Energy Catalyst? We're currently, and Charlotte is leading on this, we're doing a review of the degree to which previous Energy Catalyst projects have met the kind of developmental objectives of the T programme. So basically looking at what are the impacts on energy access issues, on the relationships between men and women in particular communities where technologies have been implemented, and so on and so forth. But we're also going to be involved with the KTN over the course of the coming weeks in running more of these kinds of events, which will be more targeted at trying to broker collaborations with online participation from Southern partners. So keep an eye out for that as a resource that will be available to everyone that's here in terms of trying to develop some of those activities. That we will be announcing those via Alice and the Innovate team over the course of the coming weeks. And also looking forward to working with the successful projects over the coming years on making sure that there is a strong developmental impact element to the work going forward. So just to finish this part of the talk, we were asked to talk about some of the experiences, both good and not so good, from some of the work that we've done that's worked in this particular area, working across north-south boundaries, working in collaboration with partners from different sectors, and so on and so forth. So we have run a network that's brought together those 13 projects, and every year we've come together to discuss the experiences of those different projects. And then gone through all of the reports that have been produced by every single one of those organisations. And I think overall there's been some very positive experiences of developing long-term collaborations between those involved in those projects that's given rise, for example, to the projects that I was just talking about, like Craig's Rice Straw project and so on. So there's been, I think, examples where Southern partners have been properly involved in the co-design of the project. They haven't just been brought along to do a specific task, but actually have been involved in the design of the project itself. And I think for successful projects, that's massively important. So if you're involved in bringing together an idea at the moment, the quicker you can get involved with potential partners in Southern countries, the much more effective your collaboration with them is going to be. Things that we've encountered as difficulties in that relationship. Some of the project leaders talked about a difficulty in communication, and how do you, if there isn't a big budget for lots of frequent visits between the partners, how do you really get engaged in that process? And how do you continue to incorporate an effective level of collaboration? Another issue is about contracting and the fair forms of contracting and relationships between northern and southern partners. And there's been a big experience of, through, for example, the UK CDR, as it's now called, where we can provide some guidance in relation to that. What have the key difficulties been? Different expectations of research and non-research partners. A lot of our industrial collaborators say universities are very, very difficult to work with. I think most of you said you've had Innovate funding, so you know a lot about those kinds of issues. Also, issues to do with engineers and social scientists working together and the different goals of, for example, RC UK and DFID. So because this programme is now co-funded by RC UK and DFID, that was also the case with the USES programme, and it did lead to some tensions. Is the major focus on the quality of the research output, or is the major focus on the impact of the work that you actually do on the project? And I think that's something that's well worth exploring. There's also, in terms of the relationships and expectations between the different partners, we found that some PIs on the projects found it quite difficult to motivate some of the southern partners because of perhaps a lack of budget going to those partners, or a lack of capacity within those partners. At the same time, there's also a feeling of a lack of communication sometimes on part of the PI from the southern partners. So there's a need to invest in appropriate forms of governance and management of projects effectively. I think some of the things that came out of the projects that we've been exploring is finding inventive solutions when these problems are identified. This is a particular issue, I think, in projects. If we're looking at a 6 to 12 month project, being able to deal with those kinds of issues very, very quickly is a massively important part of the success of any of these kinds of projects. Secondly, for the USES projects, there was across the board a feeling that there had been too little PI time put into the project in terms of managing the complexities of working with partners in different countries. So if you haven't done this kind of project before, think about that in terms of the amount of time that you put to the PI of the project. I think one of the things that also came out is actually this kind of opportunity to discuss experiences and to share experiences like we were able to do through the USES network is actually going to be an important part of the success of projects going forward, where we can bring people together to learn from their experiences. So some recommendations from Southern partners. If you're looking to engage with Southern partners, these were some of the things that Southern partners told us when they were responding to how well they thought the USES projects had gone. Firstly is, especially for short projects, manage expectations at the outset between partners, what is expected from those partners, and establish respect for deadlines. Secondly, is that the complexities of working with different types of organisation will be much larger than you think they're going to be, which means that you need to put time into them. The third point is not so useful for these projects in some senses, because actually we know that the initial projects tend to have to be short, but generally, if you're looking to create longer-term sustainability, then if you can work with the same partners over a longer period of time, then that's the way of doing that. Quite often, people don't put enough budget into stakeholder participation. If you're looking to get buy-in from various organisations and work closely and effectively with organisations, there needs to be money to pay for people's time. If we work in Kenya frequently, if you try and do a meeting with local government offices in Kenya and you don't provide per diems, then you won't get them there. Okay, so things like that is important for people to know and understand. So also is, if you're looking to work with an organisation over a longer period of time, how are you going to sustain that beyond the end of the actual project itself? So that's the LCEDN. That's the kind of stuff that we're involved in. How can you get involved with us? What kinds of things can you get from us? Hopefully I've already explained the kind of ideas that we're involved in. Much like the KTN said, come and talk to us while we're here. As I said, it's myself and John and Charlotte and Harry over here. But also have a look at our website, follow us on Twitter or on Facebook. We're also individually on LinkedIn as well, although we haven't kind of got the institutional things going like the KTN have on LinkedIn, but it's something we should probably get involved in. Very quickly then, I just want to say, I was asked to say a few more words about particularly the gender dimensions that's been introduced into Energy Catalyst for the first time. And this is an area that we've been working on quite closely with DFID under the first 18 months of the T programme, around why gender is a massively important issue to be aware of in dealing with projects around energy and international development, as part of a broader focus on it's not just technology. What we need to do in terms of addressing the energy trilemma is not just creating new forms of technology, it's about how those technologies are implemented and the impacts that that technology has. So the T programme, which is where a lot of this funding comes from, talks about the fact that any project that's going to be funded through this round has to speed up access to affordable clean energy services for poor households and enterprises across the Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And it must do this by supporting the development, testing and or scale up of innovative technologies and business models, and that we're prioritising in-country activities with measurable, scalable and local impacts. That point, measurable, scalable and local impacts, is the real crux of this. How do we know that the technologies that we're developing are really going to have a strong, significant impact on the lives of those on the bottom of the pyramid? Oh, sorry, don't move around so much, was that? Sorry. In terms of gender, the criteria that are written into the programme is that, one, your application must take into account gender equality and social inclusion issues. So who are the main beneficiaries of your technological development, and how do you target that? How will you mitigate any negative effects that your project may have, and how do you identify what those effects are? And then also that you need to provide a plan of how you will address these gender and social inclusion issues during the lifetime of your project, which means working with people that have experience in those kinds of ideas, I would suggest, is a really important part of this process. We've, as I said, been working with Energia, and in a recent workshop that we did with them and the Carbon Trust, from all of their years of experience of working in this area, they refined down to 4 core areas where gender issues are important in energy interventions. And they suggest that basically any development intervention, whether it be in this sector that we're all working with or any other sector, is not necessarily going to be gender neutral. And there are a number of ways in which this works. Firstly, women and men have different levels of participation in decision making. So we might say, right, we've got a very good project that's very open, that we're going to go and talk to our local communities, but unless we address the fact that women won't have access to those decision-making processes as much as men will, then we are by definition not addressing gender issues effectively. Secondly, women don't have equal access to resources. So if our intervention is designed to improve people's access to resources, then if we don't actively look to seek the participation of women and to give them opportunities to take advantage of these innovations, then we are probably going to invest in areas of technology that will accentuate those existing resource divides. So it's how you find ways of dealing with those issues. And energy sector interventions can have particular impacts on areas where women are most strongly affected. So it could be to do with safety issues. So actually you could have a really beneficial impact of a project providing access to lighting, which improves the security conditions within a community. However, there could be negative health implications for women. It's a whole host of issues to do with that. Finally, all of our projects, we hope, will have employment implications within the countries that we're operating in. The degree to which women are able to take advantage of those opportunities is another issue to think about. It won't happen automatically, but there is already very good evidence of programs where women have been able to take very entrepreneurial attitudes within this sector and have been very effective in their ownership of the sector. So those are the kind of core issues. in terms of gender in tea, this is a kind of working document. I hope the Carbon Trust aren't going to tell me off for putting this up, so we may have to talk about this in terms of how it comes across. But this is a working document around the way in which we're viewing this within the tea programme, and that there are passive ways of discussing gender, and there are also active ways of addressing gender. So passively, it's about recording the impact of your project. It's about disaggregating your data collection right at the start of the project. It's about reporting on disaggregated evidence from the way in which your project's been carried out, and monitoring and reporting those impacts as you go through. More actively, then it's about actually doing a gender assessment in which direction you go in your project development. It's about gender-sensitive design in the design of your project. It's about gendered prioritisation of the implementation of your project. It's all of those different activities. And one of the things we've been working on is a way in which you can actually look at a toolkit, and Energia have been doing work on this for years and years and years, about how you actually mainstream an approach towards gender in the work that you're doing in this kind of space, and we can share more resources about that as we go forward. Just for one example is how do you actually gather data if you're doing work on this. This is from work that Energia have done elsewhere, and this can be about, is there disaggregated data and how you get access to disaggregated data, but also is there data that is not normally collected because it's not normally focused, or it's not normally the focus of data collection. So it could be, for example, there's a lot more evidence in the data that's collected generally about electricity access than there is about access to cooking fuels, mainly because cooking fuels are an arena of women's work within a household and is much less readily available for data collection than data collection about electricity. So it's those kinds of issues that we're concerned about. Finally, just to say it's very easy to talk about this in a very general way. What about individual specific projects and how do you address those kinds of issues? Well, we had an Innovate project that's recently come to a close, all about how can we accelerate the use of electricity in cooking within Sub-Saharan Africa. eCook is the project. This is a kind of a graphic that we've produced about the general context about how we push moves towards electric cooking. We could just talk about that as being a simple idea of decreasing carbon. A technological development, let's get more people using it. However, from thinking through this project, we came up with a whole load of other issues. One is it affects people's lives at a very fundamental level. Just providing someone with access to electricity for cooking can have a very, very different outcome in terms of people's convenience of how they cook and when they cook. Also, it's not just about the new technology itself, it's also about the impact that has on other people. So if we're encouraging people to use electronic devices for cooking, ultimately our goal is that people stop using charcoal. Within a country like Kenya, there is a very gendered division of labour in the production of charcoal. So what impact is a transition away from charcoal going to have on those people that currently make their livings from charcoal? And a whole host of other issues to do with that as well. So those are just some of the examples we've looked at in the electric cooking project, and it's those kinds of things that we need to be thinking about. Also, one of the things we're looking at is roles in the value chain. How do we encourage the participation of women in those countries where it seems to us that there is a potential to pursue this in market opportunities? And one example of this is taken from the solar system model of solar home systems in Tanzania, which has used the kind of almost Avon-style approach to the marketing of solar home systems within the Tanzanian context. So I could go on about this a lot longer, but hopefully that's whetted your appetite to some of the issues that we need to be dealing with in addressing with these kinds of issues. So I'll hand over, I think it's to David next.
So apologies, David was going to be with us now. His train arrived, or so we were told, about 10:30. He's obviously running a bit late. What I suggest we do, we can take 10 minutes or so for some Q&A. So can you please, as a reminder before, please wait for the benefit particularly of the webcast, and so we can pick all this up on the recording, unless this is David now. So we've got some time for Q&A. So, oh, there's one here.
There's a lot that's been spoken about Africa. In the documentation, South Asia was also talked about. Is India included in the call at all?
So I was going to say, I invite either Ed or Alice up to answer the questions.
I believe so. I've just been texting David Atkin going, we need a list because we haven't got it confirmed with DFID yet because everyone's on holiday, sadly. Give us a week, everyone's back, and the list will be available when you sign up and you get your application form. You'll get access to the FTP site. There's some additional documents on bioenergy, and there'll also be a list of what we classify as Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. But yes, I believe provisionally, I think I got an okay from India, so yeah, that should be involved.
Two very quick questions. Bioenergy seems to have a particular pot, but one of the projects we're working on is essentially developing an electronic hyper-efficient cooker, which will remove bioenergy from the system because it will remove charcoal. Does that count as a bioenergy project?
So it counts as a bioenergy project in terms of the £5 million scope. For the additional £3 million, you have to. 2 seconds. Dum da dum da dum da dum da dum. Talk among yourselves. Well, hey, right. And then she does it too quickly. This serves me right for being. Lucky we've got time, hey? I am just trying to use the time. So this is the exact scope we are using to determine if you're eligible for the extra £3 million. So from what you've just told me, you're not, because you're not doing anything around electricity and or heat applications between 10 kilowatt and 5 megawatt. So you're still in scope in terms of the wider programme, but you won't be eligible for this £3 million.
It does seem perverse that as bio is a major source of poverty and pollution, it's outside the scope. I'm not sure if you define the scope. Second question, what's an international partner? We have a head office in the UK and we have offices in Kenya. We have most of our staff in Kenya and the shareholders are split between the two. Which are we?
Well, it depends how you apply and how you're made up. So if you apply as the UK entity of that, you can be a UK business, depending on how you're registered in Companies House, basically. So it depends on how you're registered, depending on how you apply. But theoretically, you could apply as multiple offices.
Alice, do you want me to reply? I know some of the background to the other bit.
Go on up.
My understanding about the out of scope bit is that there has been an ongoing programme of research funded by DFID under the bioenergy programme, the first phase of which identified that particular area of between 10 kilowatt and 5 megawatt of bioenergy production, electricity production. That's my understanding of that particular part of why that is in there. But I'm sure David, when he gets here, will be able to talk about that in more detail. But that's my understanding.
Okay, can we have a question from Jonathan? From
Yeah,
the website?
so we've got a few questions from our online participants. I think
Jonathan, can you speak up a bit?
I'll speak closer to the microphone. Can you hear
Thank
now?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a few questions from our online participants. The first one was, can we have a definition, please, of what South Asia includes? So I think you've already fielded that one.
Yeah, we'll get a new list.
Yep. Can one apply for both EC Round 6 and an innovation loan together?
Yes and no. Greatest answer ever.
Funny, that's what I wrote on the blog.
So basically, you can never double count state aid. So therefore, you couldn't use the money that you're getting from this. You couldn't do the same project as you're doing for Energy Catalyst Round 6 as the loan project. They can be complementary. We won't fund you to do the same thing twice.
Glad to hear that, because that's what I said.
We will not provide the money you're getting from this grant cannot provide any kind of match in terms, or actually the money you're getting from the loan can't provide the match because it's state aid matching state aid, which you're not allowed to do.
Indeed, thank you. And clarification, will the slides and recording be made available?
Yes, all the slides will be available online along with a recording if you'd like to listen to this again.
Thank you.
Is it the case that the countries you've listed on the bottom of the bioenergy slide are only for the bioenergy bit, and the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, however it is to be defined, is available for an application?
So the bioenergy money is reserved for these countries and this application. However, the rest of the money is available for the entire of Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, and that list will be available on the FTP site. So, in fact, if we say we get some really good bioenergy projects, and they happen to all be really highly ranked, and we run out of the 3 million, we can use the other T money to fund the other bioenergy projects in this area. It just means that this bit is just reserved. The other 5 million is a bit more flexible.
Can you take some front, please?
Thank you. Under solar energy or renewables, you mentioned solar energy, solar electricity, photovoltaics. Does that mean that solar thermal electricity is not included? And
No, it just means the tag wasn't there, so you'd have to put it under heat. So basically all technology which hits the energy trilemma, the energy access needs of Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, and gender are in scope for this competition. All of them. It just happens that we've reserved a bit for bioenergy because we had some extra money going around. That is just the case.
Hi Alice, you mentioned that bioenergy didn't have a technology area. So
It doesn't have a tag.
A tag, yeah.
It's just the way our system works.
Which one should we put it under, please?
Whichever one you think yours is most applicable to.
Okay,
You can apply up
thanks.
to 3. It's just a way of us managing our portfolio later. We use it to actually assign assessors and stuff like that. It doesn't have any input on your application. It's just an internal tag. Yeah, you can apply for nuclear. See if you can get the energy access requirements.
How long has the organisation been in operation before they can apply for this?
So you have to be a business by the time the grant starts.
So just 2 more then, please. 2 more questions and then we'll move on.
Hi, good morning. Just a couple of clarifications about the bioenergy. Firstly, the heat, electricity and or heat, is that just like combined heat and power type heat, or could that be a gas grid for cooking, for example?
It can be anything to do with electricity and or heat. This is the exact scope we're marking you again. These are the exact lines we'll be giving to the Carbon Trust and guys to look at. So this is what we're going to mark you against. It can be anything which is electricity and or heat between 10 kilowatt and 5 megawatt.
Okay, and thank you. And the other thing is, if, for example, one of our partners wants to set up a manufacturing plant in India, but they're going to supply us in Africa, would that come under the, just, it's a little bit convoluted, but would that come under the 3 million, or would that have to be the TEA funding? Can it be multiple within one project?
I don't know. Do you know?
The answer is
I mean,
there. The
it's-
project must address the needs. So long as that equipment is
So as
doing
long-
good in there and there's a need in that country.
So as long as you're doing work in that country, it's fine. So as long as if it's coming from somewhere else and going in, it should be fine. But I can get clarification. If you write it into an email to me, I can get a formal response from both us and DFID.
But even if it isn't, it could be part funded, you know, within that project. It could be taking money from the TEA,
Yes.
the broader.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more question? We're all good to go. You got one more here then, Naz.
You may be addressing this afternoon, but there's clearly a need for you to have continuity from previous applications, but we've got different things to address here. So I have a sort of multifaceted question that arises from that. For example, will there be space to address the gender equality and social inclusion in a separate area, or do we have to squeeze it into the remaining 10 questions that we're all used to?
I've given you an extra scope question because I'm so generous. Yeah, there's an extra box for the gender and social inclusion bit because we're making it act as a scope rather than You know, in the standard one, we have scope, and then we have the 10 standard questions we've got. Julie will go through this later. We've given you an extra scope question and appendix to talk about the social and gender inclusion issues. And we've asked you to include a very, very basic log frame, just so we know that you're thinking about it to be in scope.
Okay. And given the different criteria by which you are assessing this, will you have a mechanism in place to ensure all assessors are brought up to the new criteria?
Yeah.
Particularly, they're used to assessing the energy trilemma from a UK perspective, yet you're asking us to essentially deploy this in Africa. So any carbon reductions will have zero impact on the UK carbon reductions, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Jobs presumably want to be created in Africa, preferably women, preferably youth, preferably fully socially inclusive, but not necessarily UK, etc. And therefore, how much UK benefit do we need to see?
So the idea of, so this is an Innovate UK programme which DFID are applying money into. So it's two strands. So as part of why DFID put money in is we are looking for UK business growth. Now that doesn't mean that, that it has to be deployed in the UK for UK emissions, but it does mean that we're expecting to see the business grow in some form because you're supplying products and services for Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And we're expecting kind of tech transfer and this kind of lark. Then comment to the assessors, and will they be informed about this? Yes, because they have to sit through an hour of me talking about it, because they're very lucky guys. So yeah, they will be informed. We will be making it very clear. We'll be basically providing the exact same information that we just provided you to the assessors. We like to give the applicants and the assessors the same information, because that way they should be on the exact same line. So they will be having this exact same conversation. Great.
Thanks, Alice. Could
That's
you
all
find David's slides?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, guys. Now I'd like to invite David. We'll find your title slide. And there you go.
Hello everyone, I'm David Atkin from the Carbon Trust. Delighted to be here today at this brokerage event, which sounds like it's already stimulated some quite interesting discussions and queries, so great to see that level of engagement and interest. I'd like to build on the presentations that have been made already this morning and talk a little bit more around the Department for International Development, or DFID's scope. So I'm from the Carbon Trust. We work with DFID to help deliver a program called Transforming Energy Access, which provides the funding for Energy Catalyst Round 6 from DFID. I'd like to touch on four main areas, and then I'd like to try and keep a bit of time for questions and answers. I know there's space later in the program. I'll also be around for most of the day, so if you don't get a chance to ask a question in this session, please grab me or Alice or any of the others here today to check, or please feel free to follow up afterwards. The four main areas I'd like to touch on. Firstly, just looking at an overview of energy access. So this will be familiar to many of the people in the room, but just to set the context before we jump into the discussions around the Transforming Energy Access Program, which is a large-scale DFID initiative to transform energy access in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. I'll then look at the bioenergy for sustainable energy access in Africa component, which is part of the funding for this Energy Catalyst Round 6 and has some specific requirements to it, which Alice has already touched on this morning. And then just round out with a quick overview of some of the other work that DFID is doing in this space, just to try and give you a little bit more of a sense of where this program fits within DFID's broader activities and some of the other things that are going on in the landscape. Okay, energy access, what's it all about? Why is DFID putting money into this area, and why is this money flowing into the Energy Catalyst? This is a big challenge and a big opportunity for people all around the world to address one of the most significant issues that we face. More than 1 billion people still do not have access to electricity, and around 3 billion people still rely on solid fuels and kerosene for cooking and heating. So a lot of the modern energy services that we take for granted are still quite uncommon or inaccessible to many people in developing countries, particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. We also know that energy is a key factor in sustainable development and poverty alleviation. There is a specific Sustainable Development Goal, Sustainable Development Goal 7, around access to affordable and clean energy. But we also know that energy underpins many of the other Sustainable Development Goals and is key in unlocking the sustainable development and poverty alleviation targets that not just DFID but many other organisations around the world have. We also know that while good progress has been made and a lot of people have been connected and given access to modern forms of energy, many other people still remain without that access, and that on current trajectories we will not hit the SDG 7 target to provide universal access to modern energy by 2030. And we also know that if you start breaking this down and segmenting how that access has been provided, that there are some segments that have benefited more than others. So we know that the bulk of the energy access gains that have been made in recent years have been made in urban areas for understandable reasons around population density and cost to serve and various other reasons. But there are many people, particularly in rural areas, more difficult to reach areas that still haven't benefited from some of the big improvements that have been made in energy access in recent years. While the grid is important and is fundamental to the way that many countries deliver their energy services, and grid extension will be an important component in the work that goes on in Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia and elsewhere in helping to provide modern energy services to people. We know that it's not the only answer. Grid-based systems face economic barriers, they face governance barriers. So there are challenges in extending the grid to everyone. It's just not practical, economic, or the best thing to do. There are also big opportunities for decentralised and smart systems. So this is a huge problem to solve. This is a big opportunity for UK businesses and a big opportunity to address some of the defining challenges of our time. So what's DFID doing about it? One of DFID's flagship programs is the Transforming Energy Access program. Now fundamentally this program is about supporting early stage testing and scale up of technologies and business models that are innovative in their way of providing access to affordable clean energy, not just to households but also to businesses in these two focus regions in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. So what does this look like? Well, this is more detail than you're going to be able to read or digest on this screen or for remotely. But broadly, there's 5 main parts that our consortium, which the Carbon Trust leads with the Energy Research Centre at the University of Cape Town, TERI in India, the Energy and Resources Institute, and Energy for Impact are helping DFID to deliver. The energy catalyst component is one of the 5 important components, as is the bioenergy for sustainable energy access, and where 3 million of the 10 million funding for this round 6 call comes from. There has already been a significant level of activity on the energy catalyst side. There are already more than 70 projects funded in the rounds 3, 4 and 5 projects that DFID has supported as part of a larger portfolio of energy catalyst activity. So this is already something that is operating at scale within the program. There are other activities that are also operating at scale, in particular the partnership with Shell Foundation. So this is a 60 million initiative between Shell Foundation and DFID, 30 million from each partner to accelerate the growth of pioneering businesses, providing energy access to households, businesses and in the off-grid utility sector. And that's something that has been operating for the last couple of years and has supported many businesses, and some of the businesses that have been supported through the Energy Catalyst piece have gone on to receive help from the Shell Foundation partnership. There are also some other activities that are at earlier stages of development. So the Clean Energy Partnerships and Skills and Expertise components are two other elements within the overall program. Some activities under these components have already started. So the Low Carbon Energy for Development Network activity that Ed and colleagues lead is something that's already started under the Developing Local Skills and Expertise component, and is something that is already underway and delivering value in the UK and overseas. There are two other new initiatives that are shaping up through the skills component to address some of the skills and capacity gaps that we see in this sector in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And then also a range of partnerships that are being shaped to build on the two fast-track projects that have already taken place under the Clean Energy Partnerships component, which have had a particular focus around finance. So one on the crowdfunding side and another on the early stage equity investment side through the Atkin Pioneer Energy Investment Initiative. So there's a range of other activity that is being programmed through this £70 million allocation that DFID has made to this overall program. Now, if you thought that slide was complicated, this is taking it to the next level of detail. Now, I'm not expecting or necessarily wanting to get into all the detail here, but just thought it was useful to give you a sense of the range of activity that is being supported by this program already, that the Energy Catalyst work is part of. And perhaps if we just start with the central band where you see the Innovate UK and Shell Foundation components particularly focusing. So there's a 15 million allocation for Innovate UK and a 30 million allocation for the Shell Foundation. So a big chunk of the DFID funded activity is looking at addressing key challenges around home solar, last mile distribution, mini grids, energy for business through these mechanisms. Now, these different components are at different stages. So we've seen a lot of activity, particularly in East Africa in the solar home system sector, and some really interesting businesses, business models, investment activity, and ecosystems developing around that activity in East Africa in particular. And that is starting to spread, not just to West Africa, but also into Southern Africa. There's some interesting activity happening in South Asia in this space as well. So this is really driving a lot of the activity at a household level in the energy access sector. It's not the only way of providing energy access, though. Mini grids are an important and intermediate solution between some of the household systems and some of the grid scale systems that we see. There's a lot of interesting activity that's happening in mini grids. It's in some respects at an earlier stage of development in terms of scale and the need for concessionary capital to still support the mini grid sector to develop. But some really interesting solutions, business models, companies, and projects starting to emerge on the mini grid side. It's not all about providing energy to people and households, though. There's also a strong component and need to provide energy for business, and in some cases the intersections between these different components start becoming quite important. So in the mini grid side, a challenge is ensuring there's sufficient demand to make the mini grid economic, and part of that story is around helping develop the local businesses and provide the energy that then makes the mini grids easier to economically deliver. So there's some interesting activity that both Innovate UK and Shell Foundation have been supporting on the energy for business side, and ultimately these are not just technology plays. We need to get solutions to the people who need them. So there's important components around distribution, particularly as we get into the last mile and outside some of the urban and peri-urban areas, which have received most of the energy access support and activity to date. And so, in addition, some of the project level activity that you see, there's also specific initiatives around addressing last mile distribution through things like Global Distributors Collective that has been shaped up with Practical Action and partners there. There's also an interesting piece around finance. So most of the support that's provided through Innovate UK and Shell Foundation is provided as grants, but there is also an important component around debt and equity. Some of this has already been provided through some of those fast start initiatives that I mentioned, the crowdfunding initiatives, and then also the Pioneer Energy Investment Initiative. But there's also activity that can build on those existing initiatives. As I touched on earlier, there's both a big opportunity but also a big challenge for some of these sectors. So mini-grids is an example where we're interested to see costs reduce, both in terms of the individual component technologies but also the systems. And so some of the partnership activities is looking at how we can reduce costs for mini-grids in partnership with AMDA and some of the other activity that's already taking place in that space. And we know that the ecosystems that these solutions are being deployed in is still developing. And there's an important role for National Renewable Energy Associations and others to play to help build the supporting infrastructure and ecosystems that enable these solutions to be deployed. And ultimately, the case for this becomes a lot stronger if we can tell a story and convince people around the productive opportunities that come from the local job creation and the economic benefits from providing these solutions. So there's a whole range of activity there through the not just the Energy Catalyst and Shell Foundation projects, but some of the new partnerships that are being shaped up. You'll notice there's a draft tag on this slide. This is still a work in progress and hasn't been finalised, but just wanted to give you a sense of some of the things that are coming through. And also on the skills side, so both on the academic side and then also the talent side within some of the companies. There's a couple of new initiatives that we're shaping up there, and ultimately this is all underpinned by a range of monitoring and evaluation activity and support from activities like LCEDN, Lean Data, that is a monitoring and evaluation and customer insights tool really that Atkin has developed, and then a portfolio review and coordination exercise with DFID and others that are providing support in the space. So there's a rich activity of work that's taking place even just within this Transforming Energy Access program, of which the Energy Catalyst component is part of the story. In the last Energy Catalyst round, the structure was somewhat similar to what we see in terms of funding with round 6. So we had DFID providing the majority of the money, with important co-funding coming in from the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. And so we thought it was helpful perhaps just to share some of the examples of projects that were selected for support from round 5 to give you a sense of some of the types of initiatives that were supported there. Again, I won't go through these in detail. The slides are available, but I think the key message from here is there are a range of solutions at different stages, addressing different sectors with quite different funding amounts. Through from early stage activity around feasibility work for integrating systems for monitoring, control, and trialling renewable energy solutions to lower prices and increase costs with demonstration activities here in the UK and in Scotland, through to large-scale activities for developing the next generation of crop processing mills and solar cookers, and deploying them and running field trials in country and in the focus regions for the Transforming Energy Access program. These are typically activities that are particularly in the mid and late stage delivered with partners locally to help provide some of that local context, insights, experience and networks to help increase the chances that these projects are successful. And so hopefully this gives you a flavour of some of the types of projects that have been supported before. But as Alice and others have explained, it's very much a broad canvas within the energy access focus of this call and the geographic focus within Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia around the solutions that you think are best placed to meet the energy access needs of people in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. I think some of the bioenergy activity has been touched on already, so I won't go into so much detail here. As others have already explained, there are both country constraints around this specific allocation of 3 million within the broader 10 million allocation within Energy Catalyst, as well as constraints around the target technologies, the types of technologies, the size of technologies, and also the stage that these projects are focusing on. I think it is helpful if you are thinking about this area and thinking about this component of funding in particular, to look at some of the existing research that's already been done to inform some of the focus for this part of the funding. These reports are available online, so you're able to look through them to see both where targeted interventions could help to unlock some of the markets for bioenergy and productive use within Africa, and also some of the challenges and example solutions that you see there. As examples for the anaerobic digestion side, you'll see challenges around unreliable feedstock supplies, costly and insufficiently adapted technology, capacity constraints around limited operator technical capacity, and then also challenges around business models to make these solutions work. So there are examples of the types of solutions that emerged as potential ways forward from the earlier research that was led by an organisation called LTS International. Those reports are available online that provide more information on these areas. Similarly, for gasification and steam turbines, challenges for these solutions and delivering bioenergy at scale in Sub-Saharan Africa. Building on some of the earlier ones that we've seen around feedstock and business models and technical capacity, but also efficiency and otherwise. This list is very much not exhaustive, so if you are interested in this area, I'd really encourage you to look at the final reports and follow up if you have queries or things aren't clear or not well understood. And perhaps just to wrap up before I open up for questions, I painted a somewhat complicated picture of even what's happening within the Transforming Energy Access Program, but the good news is this is not all that DFID is doing in this space. So there is a range of other activity that DFID is supporting, and I described that the Transforming Energy Access work particularly focuses around the early stage with the work that Energy Catalyst, but also Shell Foundation and some of the skills and partnerships initiatives are supporting. But that's not the only work that DFID is supporting. There's various other activity around building capacity, both of governments and businesses, through things like some of the ACE activities that are either started or planned to come online. But then also for more mature businesses. So DFID is also through CDC, the UK's development arm and investor, has put both money directly into businesses, debt and equity, but also into funds that support businesses that operate in this space. So funds like Energy Access Ventures and Novastar. So there's a range of support that DFID is providing that is complemented by a range of either country-specific or activity-specific programs that complement that activity at different stages. So there's a lot of work that DFID is doing around the policy space, developing compacts with country governments in Africa. You see programs around particular sectors or countries, programs like Solar Nigeria. You'll see activity around particular financing mechanisms, so results-based financing with NDEV. Other grant-focused activity that DFID has supported through programs like REACT, EAP, GSMA, the Mobile Association, as well as then specific initiatives in country, things like Brillo Mozambique that's just getting going, funds like Kawasafi that's essentially focusing on the follow-on investments in some of the pioneer home system companies in Kenya and Rwanda in particular, as well as prizes for things like efficient appliances, so fridge prizes through things like Global Leap, the LAYER program, the Low Energy Inclusive Appliances program. So there's a whole range of activity. It's covering power, heat, cooking, transport, a whole range of things. So I would encourage you not just to look at some of the information that's on the Innovate UK and Energy Catalyst portal, but also that's available more generally around energy access. There's some fantastic reports out there, World Bank, Sustainable Energy for All, and others that have provided that provide information around what's happening in the sector, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, what some people are already doing. That gives you a sense of how you can build on some of the activity that's already underway. And hopefully, as an overview, this has given you a bit more of a flavour of both DFID's work and some of the activity that DFID is supporting in the space. And with that, let me wrap up and perhaps open to a few quick questions if we have time.
Yes, we've got 5 minutes for questions just to try and get us back on track. So, any burning questions for David?
Thank you. With a specific reference to East Africa, there are 2 UK government MOUs, each for £250 million with Tanzania and with Kenya. In both cases, HM Treasury declined to do anything that involves Kenya Power and Lighting Corporation and TANESCO because they deem them insolvent, but they also want you to take chunks of 15 or 20 million quid at a time. And therefore they're unusable in many senses. Is there any way we can persuade Treasury, using DFID as an agent, to allow you to access smaller tranches? Because the cost of capital is a fundamental problem for us, I think. It's not necessarily innovation. There are lots of things we could do if we had acceptable non-African costs of capital. The money is there. The mechanism doesn't allow us to get access to it.
It's a big question. I suggest for today we focus on what's needed for round 6 and what some of the questions are that are directly related to that. I mean, I think, in general, and this is a personal reflection rather than speaking on behalf of DFID, UK government, Carbon Trust, and so on. I think there's a range of activity that needs to take place that varies by market. Utilities, not just in Kenya and Tanzania, but elsewhere, have challenges around their balance sheets, the extent to which they're an effective counterparty. You've got financing challenges more generally in the landscape. Analyses that Shell Foundation, that Bloomberg New Energy Finance, that various others have done, have looked at the amount of finance that's needed. And while you're right to an extent that the money's there, actually not enough money is there. We need 30 billion plus to deliver on SDG 7 by 2030. And a significant component of that, $1 billion plus, needs to be concessional capital. And that's not there. And it's certainly not there for all the sectors. And in some respects, I think, it can be unhelpful thinking about the sort of grid versus off-grid piece as well. And in many respects, it's a continuum. A lot of the solar home system businesses are operating in environments where they're topping up what the grid is providing or is connecting people to. I think the policy dialogue and the work that UK government does more broadly, it's a big challenge. There's a lot of interesting work that's going on. I think the compacts are really important there in aligning countries, UK and Mozambique and Sierra Leone and various others around what are the key things to do to move the sector forward. There's a lot of work that needs to take place beyond this activity, but that's a big problem to solve, and perhaps if we focus on really strong applications for round 6, that would be also really important and certainly something that we'd be really keen to see.
Jonathan, have you any questions? No? So, time for one more then, please, and then we'll stop for a short break.
It's very exciting to see a plethora of ideas and different supports and mechanisms. I guess the downside of that is it's incredibly confusing. Is there any mechanism, maybe this is KTN, to help us wade through and essentially be put in touch with the most relevant programs at the most relevant times? So you had programs there that have fast-track programs. How did we get into a fast-track program? You've got 6 projects coming. Does that mean it's going to be open, or you know of the 6 and it's closed and there's no point in applying? I mean, it just seems almost too much. So is there someone that can help us brokerage where we should focus our efforts?
Well, thanks, Alice. Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, I think for people in the room here today, there is 10 million available through Energy Catalyst Round 6 for hopefully the types of things that you're interested in doing. So that's a significant funding pot that is available, that is open, that KTN, LCEDN, Innovate UK, Carbon Trust and others can help as you're sort of thinking what to do and where and what it might look like. I think the bigger question about how you can plug into some of the other activity that's happening within, for example, the Transforming Energy Access Program, or more broadly that DFID or others are providing, is a really good one. I think a lot of that activity is being taken forward by other lead partners. The reason for carving out activity around Innovate UK or Shell Foundation or others is to try and give a focus for innovators, UK-led applications through Innovate UK and Shell Foundation through the work they do with businesses and ecosystem development. There is some signposting for what the different things are providing. I think my feeling on this normally is where there is something that's open, where there's funding available that aligns well with what you're doing, that's a great place to start. And for example, if you come into the Transforming Energy Access program through, for example, Round 6 support through Innovate UK, then one of the roles that the Carbon Trust Research Program Delivery Consortium has is to connect supported companies up to other things that are going on, both within the Transforming Energy Access Program, but also more broadly in the landscape. So certainly for supported applicants, that's something that is easier to do tangibly once people are in place. I think it's something that, in terms of what our consortium is doing, is something that is starting up. It's something that is certainly a focus going forward. I mean, if you have specific queries on any of the other mechanisms, happy to discuss them. But I think there is no one-stop shop which says this is all the list of funding sources, and these are all the deadlines, and these are all the constraints, and so on.
So how does that link up between funded programs and other things happening in TEA work? So we have just completed Catalyst Round 4 program.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get any support during it, and am I now too late because I've just successfully completed on time? Perhaps I should have asked for an extension. But
yeah, now we're getting into the mechanics of when things started at different stages on the Transforming Energy Access Program. So the Energy Catalyst component started before our consortium was brought in, and certainly for the Round 4 projects before our consortium came in. So I think this is something that going forward is increasingly a focus for work. Where there's Energy Catalyst supported projects that you're keen to connect with other things that are going on, get in touch with me or my colleagues, and happy to connect you to other things that are that are happening. And certainly, going forward is a really important focus for the work that our consortium will be doing. And I think there'll be some really interesting opportunities to connect up with. A lot of these things that I mentioned are at early stages of development. And so, I think as they scale up, it's also easier to connect people that have been supported to them.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Ash, are we okay to go again? Yeah. Okay. Now I'd like to invite Julie to run through the competition process. So, Julie.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. I think it is still morning, just about. So, all of I've got a lot of information to go through, so hopefully it's going to be interesting, and I'm going to keep you with me. Anyway, so let me just figure this out. There we go. I'm Julie Brown, Portfolio Manager at Innovate UK. I'm working with Alice, making sure that the process is fair and transparent. Okay, the agenda today for me is I'm going to talk you through eligibility. Alice has already done this, but just to recap: application process, funding rules, application finances, that's looking at project costs and academic partners, submitting your application and the way forward, and then we'll do a quick Q&A session at the end. Okay, eligibility. Alice has already been through this. Like you say, this is really, really important. If your project does not fit within the eligibility, it will be taken out and you will not go for assessment. Okay, so we've got 3 stages, early, mid and late. Early stage is feasibility, single SME or RTO, and you have to be collaborative. Project side, 50k to 300,000. Like we said, the lead has to be can be an SME. You can lead by yourself, or an RTO, and if an RTO leads, you must be collaborative. Project length is 6 to 12 months. Research participation is 50%, like Alice said. So if you've got costs of total project costs of 100,000, the business must take 50, and the research organisations must take the other 50. 10-mark questions, and if you do have an academic in your consortium, we do need a JES output document. Mid-stage and late stage. Mid is industrial research, collaborative, UK business can lead, 50k to 1.5 million. Project length is 12 to 24 months. And this is where it's slightly different. The research participation is 30%. So again, if you've got a total project cost of 100,000, business would take 70,000, and the research would take 30. If you have more than one research in your consortium, research organisation in your consortium, they would share the 30 between them. Again, late stage is experimental development, must be collaborative, 50,000 to 3 million, that's your project cost. UK business must lead, 12 to 30 months, and again the 30% participation rule. So business takes 70, research organisations take 30. Projects must start by the 1st of April and end by the 30th of September 2021. Okay, this is the types of organisations that Innovate UK fund. The amount of funding you will receive will depend on which of these categories you fit into. Now, businesses, we do have an EU definition, so I would suggest, if possible, please go onto the Innovate UK website, have a look at UE definition of the businesses, and it will tell you whether you're a small, micro, medium or large. Research organisations falls into, you can be universities, RTOs, like Alice said, the non-profit distributing, which includes catapults and TWIs. Public sector research establishments, I should say, research council institutes. Okay, participation rules, I explained this just a minute ago. It is state aid that we have to do this. So early stage is 50%, like I've said. Total eligible project costs must be incurred by the business, and the other 50% will be the research organisation. So again, if you have more than one research organisation in your consortium, they must share the 50%. Mid and early stage are 30%. So again, business will take 70% of the project costs, and the research organisations either by themselves will take 30 or they will share that 30. Okay, collaboration. There must be evidence of genuine collaboration in your application. You do need to explain how all the parties will contribute on the project and benefit from the collaboration. Again, we're just stressing that early SME can apply on their own or be RTO-led, but must be collaborative, and mid and late must be business-led and collaborative. Again, just going over what Alice stated earlier about international partners. We are strongly encouraging international partners for each stream where relevant for the project. They will be funded through the UK lead partner on the same grant percentage as the UK organisations. Organisations from anywhere in the world are eligible to be a partner but cannot lead. For mid and late stage, there is a requirement to do either testing or demonstration work in either Sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia. This is very important to note. If you have an outstanding final claim, an independent account report on any live Innovate UK project, you will not be eligible to apply for grant funding in this competition as a lead or a partner organisation. If you have applied to a previous competition as a lead or a sole company and were awarded funding by Innovate UK, but you have not made a substantial effort to exploit that award, we will award no more funding to you. Okay, key dates. Again, just reiterating the key dates. Competition opens, that's from Monday. You can apply to the competition, 20th of August. Briefing event is today. I will talk through the application process, but the registration deadline is 14th of November. Submission deadline noon, and that is 12 o'clock noon, 21st of November, and applicants will be informed 25th of January. So they are key dates to bear in mind for this competition. Okay, we're going to go through the application process. This is via the old system as such. You will still go into the IFS system online. So when it's open, you go into, I think it's latest funding opportunities through the Innovate UK website. Energy on the keyword. Click into the competition. And you will be able to apply. So once you press the apply button, it will go through to the old system. You will be sent an email with your application form on and details into the secure FTP site where you will then go on to load all your completed documents. You will have, in the secure FTP site, you will have some other documents. You'll have a collaboration agreement template. You will have the partner finance form that each of your non-academic partners must fill in. You will complete and all those documents on time in the timescales that we've given you. That will come back to us, so that's in the FTP site. They will be eligible checked, so I will check to make sure that they are eligible for the competition. They will go on then to have a scope check by Innovate UK, and the co-funders will have a look. Then we will send them out to assessment, those that are within eligibility and within scope. We'll go out to our assessors, I should say, to be assessed. We will then have the results will come back, be collated into a final sheet, and we will do a portfolio approach. So just making sure that we have a good selection of projects all the way across the portfolio. We will notify applicants by the date that we've specified, and you will get your feedback 4 weeks after you've been notified whether you are successful or not. Okay, I'll go in a little bit more detail into that in a minute. This is the application form, so standard application form, 10 questions. You are allowed to put appendices on questions 2, 3, 7 and 9. Now I'll go through this very quickly. If you go onto the competition website on IFS at the moment, on the How to Apply tab, it will have all the questions with all the guidance, and the guidance is very, very comprehensive. So I'm not going to read it all in the interest of time, and I don't want you to all fall asleep, but I will pull out some key points, but please do go in and have a look at the competition guidance. So just going through the elements that we will ask you. Project details. So the applicant will ask you for application details. So please make sure your research category is correct, as this is used to calculate your grant value. So if you get that wrong, you could essentially get the wrong grant paid to you, so you need to be very careful. Project summary. Here we'd like you to supply a short summary of the objectives, including the need or challenge, approach and innovation and outcomes for that project. This sets the scene for the assessor, so it's very, very important. Public description. This is if you are successful, your application is successful. We will actually publish this, so be very, very aware of confidentiality in this section. Now, Alice said this is slightly different than our usual competitions. On the gateway question, scope, we have 2 questions that we'd like you to answer. Question A is on technical scope. So all applications must address the energy trilemma and the energy access needs for the Sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia. You must show that a clear majority of the project's objectives and activities are aligned with a competition brief. Okay, and you are allowed to submit an appendix as a PDF to support this question for up to 3 pages. Gateway question B is all around gender equality and social inclusion. Wait 1 minute while I just... here we're asking you to describe who is expected to benefit directly or indirectly from the project and how they will benefit. We would like you to provide a logic model to show your rationale and assumptions in the appendix. And you may submit a single appendix again as a PDF up to 2 pages to support this question. It's really, really important that you show that your project is in scope, because if it's not shown that it's in scope, it will not go out for assessment. Okay, going through the questions. Question 1 is need or challenge. So here we're asking you, what is the drive and the reason for doing this project? Is your project market pull or technology push? We want to see that there is a genuine need for your idea. Question 2 is approach and innovation. So what are you doing in your project and how is this an improvement on what already exists? Explain how you propose to address the need, challenge or opportunity you have identified. Explain how it will improve on the nearest current state of the art identified. Indicate where the focus of that innovation will be in the project. And here, like I said, we can put an appendix up of 2 A4 pages, 1 megabyte in total as a PDF. We must stress, can you make sure that your PDFs are readable so the assessors will be able to read them if they're at 100? Team and resources is question 3. So here we're asking you to describe the project team, explain why you and any partners are the right people for the job. Assessors will be looking to see that you have the right skills, experience and access to facilities. Who's involved in that role and why them? Again, we're allowing you an appendix for this question, 4 A4 pages to describe the skills and experience of the team. Question 4 is market awareness. How well do you understand the market you're in or will be operating in? What is the structure and dynamics of those target markets? And explain the current UK position in targeting these markets. Question 5 is outcomes and route to market. What is the impact of your project to your business and consortium? Describe your current position in the market and supply value chains outlined. Describe your target customers or end users and the value proposition to them. Why would they buy it or use it? Question 6, I should say, wider impacts. So here we're looking at the wider impacts of your project outside of your project team. Identify and where possible quantify the economic benefits from the project to those outside the project. So that's your customers or others in the supply chain. Broader industry in the UK economy. Identify any expected social impacts, either positively or negative. For example, the quality of life, social inclusion, jobs safeguarded, changed, etc. Question 7 is project management. Assessors are looking here to see you have a well thought out project plan. So outline the main work packages of the project, indicating the relative research category and lead partner assigned to each and the total cost of each one. Describe your approach to project management. Outline the management reporting lines. And for this question again, you can upload a appendix for, 2 A4 pages of a Gantt chart. Question 8 is all around risks. We expect your projects to be risky. That's what we are here to fund. So the assessors need to understand that you have assessed those risks, have plans in place to mitigate them. Make sure you highlight the key risks and uncertainties of the project and your mitigation plans. And again, you can upload 2 A4 pages as a risk register. Question 9 is all around additionality. Tell us the difference the public money or public funding from Innovate UK, it's not from Innovate UK, from the partners I should say, would make to your projects such as faster route to market, more partners, reduce risk. Tell us why you're not able to wholly fund the project from your own resources or other forms of private sector funding. What would happen if this application was unsuccessful? Question 10 is cost and value for money. Again, assessors are looking here to see your project is reasonable and good value for money. So, how are the partners financing their contributions to the project? Explain how this project represents value for money for you and the taxpayer. Justify any subcontractor costs and why they're critical to the project. If you do have any other funding from public bodies, and you have to include this in the finance summary table in column 7, please provide the names of the bodies, name of the programme or scheme the funds are to come from and the fund amounts. And just to really stress, this is if we are asking you, do you have any other public funds, this is for this project and this project only. It's a big mistake a lot of people make that think, oh yes, I've had a grant before, I'll put that in. No, it's only to this actual project, okay? Finance summary table. This is what the assessors see. They don't see any other information on finance other than this. So it's a very, very top overview of all the partners and the project costs in the consortium. Okay, funding rules. Funding rules. So this is, like we said, funding is dependent upon the type of organisation. So this is just a small table. I'll just show you this. So for feasibility studies, industrial research, businesses, if you're small and micro, 70%, medium 60, large 50. If you do experimental development, it's slightly closer to market, so reduced rate. So micro, small, 45, medium, 35, large 25. Research organisations, universities, you do get 100%, but that is 80% of the full economic costs. Other research organisations can claim 100% of their project costs, but there is a caveat. They must be non-profit distributing, disseminate the project results and explain in the application form how this will be done. Public sectors and charities, they get 100% of their eligible costs, but yet again it's the same caveat. They must be performing research activity and disseminate the project results and explain in the application form how this is going to be done. Okay, you may have partners that wish to collaborate with you but don't want to claim any grant. They will be named in the collaboration agreement. All they have to do is enter 0 in the finance table and they do not need to submit a finance partner form and they won't be named in the grant offer letter. Okay, partner finance forms, they need to be completed for each business partner involved in your project. A template of the form will be available on the Secure FTP site. You'll have a public download area which will have all these documents. We have to stress that each non-academic partner claiming a grant must complete the project finance form. That's absolutely right, I just said that. The form is and does have a lot of tabs that need to be filled in. We'll go through each of these tabs in a minute. You have to make sure everything's filled, and on the front it will actually say complete. If it does say incomplete, obviously there's something missing, so you need to go back and have a look. And what I would stress is the totals on the partner finance forms must match the totals that are in the application form, which is a finance summary table. So both sets of figures must match, please. Okay. So we are now going on to project costs. So this is the eligible costs that you will see in the project finance form. So it has a tab for each of these. So we will go through each of these now in turn. Labour costs. You need to enter the position, the salary and the number of staff and the days to be spent on the project. The rate and the total costs will then be auto-calculated. So eligible labour costs include staff working directly on the project that are being paid by the PAY system. Dividends, bonuses and non-productive time are not eligible and therefore should not be included when working out these calculations. If you do not have any labour costs that you want to claim, then that is absolutely fine. Just select no from the drop-down box. Okay, overheads. Overheads are additional costs and operational expenses incurred as a direct result of the project. We do have two methods to calculate this. You can either choose the 20%. If you do choose that, that's all calculated for you. You don't have to do anything else. But if you would like to calculate it yourself, you just click the overhead, the drop-down box, and you'll be able to calculate it yourself. So if you do choose that option, it's split into both indirect and direct overheads. Indirect involve admin staff that you may need to work on a portion of their time doing, that didn't make sense, that may need to spend a proportion of their time doing work that would not be required if the project was not happening. This is what we mean by additional and directly attributable. Direct overheads are directly attributable to the project. We recognise that companies may allocate overheads using different methods. We therefore supply a simple form into which you can list out each type of direct overhead together with a methodology basis of apportionment to this particular project. Again, these overheads would not be incurred if the project does not happen. Material costs. So here you need to enter any material costs that are directly being used in the project. You'll need to enter and describe what materials you intend to use, including the volume and the cost. Capital equipment. This is where you need to describe any capital equipment, how you're using, whether it will be new or existing. If it's new, you should include the new purchase cost, how long you're depreciating it over, and the residual value at the end of the project. Sorry, getting my words mixed up there. Subcontractor costs, they are allowed, provided they're justified and quantified. So you need to detail any subcontractors working on your project, including the subcontractor name, where the work will be carried out, and a description of their role in the project. If the cost is going to be significant, then you'll need to justify who, why, and what you need them for, both here and in your application form. Now, we stress that because the assessors do not see this level of detail, so they will not see this project finance form here. They will only see the application and the overview of the finances. So if you are using subcontractors, you need to explain your application form why you're using them. So you need to justify that. Travel and subsistence, you can put all the costs in here, directly linked to the project. So any essential meetings that needs to happen during the project, please note that sales and marketing activities are ineligible and therefore should not be included. Other costs. Here you should include any other costs which don't fit into any of the previous headings. Be mindful when completing this tab that you're not double counting any costs you've already included on the other tabs or any of the previous tabs that we've just spoken about. Something to note here, £10,000 of project costs can be spent per partner on business support. It must be from an appropriately qualified and experienced advisor and will be awarded at the same funding grant as the rest of the grant. Okay, ineligible project costs. So these are some costs that you can't actually claim for. So a few of them are recoverable input and output VAT, interest charges, bad debts, profits, advertising, entertainment, hire purchase interest and associated service charges. You can find a few more details on our website should you want to have a look into this. It is worth noting, however, that the legal costs of setting up your project, the auditing and accounting costs are not eligible, so therefore cannot be claimed. Okay, if you have any academic partners in your consortium, they will need to complete a JES form, which they are really familiar with. The form validates the costs for us. Innovate UK, we don't actually have access to this JES system to extract the information ourselves, which is why we need the universities to do it for us. This is for UK universities only. If you have any international universities in your consortium, they need to complete a project finance form. Okay, they are based on the full economic calculations, so there is a 20% difference between the total cost and the full, the FEC we should say, that doesn't represent contribution to the project, so it's not to be included in the application. The universities are completely aware of this and understand this process. So what we would like you to do is enter the TSB contribution column figures from your JES output document project cost section of the application form. And then the university must submit the JES form with a with council status. But like I say, they're fully up to speed with this. They understand how this process works, so it shouldn't be an issue. They don't just have to send in their JES form, of course. They do need to do the justification of resources and pathways to impact. The full systems are on the JES system, or the full details are on the JES system. If anyone has any queries about it, please just refer to the helpline numbers there and email address. Right. submitting. So you put your application together, you're all ready to go. In the public area, there are some standard documents, like we said. So once you get your email, it will have your application form attached to it. It will also have your secure FTP site details. And this is just a document store that you can put your documents up to, a secure, and it will be only for you. So it is very, very confidential. Within the public download area, you will find a collaboration agreement and some standard offer letters, plus the information that Alice spoke about. So you'll have the South Asia breakdown of the countries, and you will also have the technology areas, so 20 technology areas, and there's something else. Bioenergy documents will be in the FTP site, so you need to download. You need to go in there and download your project finance form and make sure you send it out to any of your partners. Okay, so when you do have, so that's a public download area. You will also be given, like I said, details to your own site. So you need to go in there, log in, put in your contact details and your password that we will send you, and then you'll have access. Once you have completed all your documents, just, it sounds daft, but really just make sure that you've named them all correctly. Sometimes when people download documents, they get uploaded back in a different format, which doesn't help us. They can actually get lost in the download process. So once the competition has closed, our system will pull all the applications, all the documents behind those applications out. If you've got a wrong format, you downloaded it in Word and put it up in PDF or something, it can affect that and it can get lost. Also, naming is really, really important. On your application form, you will have your own individual application number. Please use that with any other document that you put up there, just so that if it does go awry, or we can find it and they all stay together. So you do need to make sure that happens. Okay, one thing to note, when you do upload all your application and your all your documents, it doesn't send you an email to say that you've done it. So a lot of people think, oh gosh, is it there? Is it what? The suggestion is log out, log back in, and then you will be able to see all your documents there. Assessment, the application is assessed. It does involve, like I said, a scope check, and then it's reviewed by 5 independent assessors. The scores are then collated into final scores. Assessors do tell us all the time that they want clarity, detail and justification, and to see that the applicant has presented a viable opportunity for growth with an exciting innovation where public funding will make a real difference to developing their ideas, and that they have the right people, right approach to run a successful project and exploit the results. So answer the questions in the guidance, so the assessor can award you the maximum marks. Even if you have a fantastic idea, if you don't answer the questions that are in the guidance, you won't score very well. Make sure your application reads well. You want to keep the assessors engaged and interested in your proposal. Get them excited about your idea. So, these assessors will be reading lots and lots of applications, so make yours stand out. Right, what happens if you are successful? Okay, you will be sent notification to say that you are successful. I think we've got 25th of January on here, 25th of January, and then around about 3 to 4 weeks later, you will be sent your conditional offer letter. Within that conditional offer letter, there will be a list of things that you need to provide to us. So you need to return the documents to us. We will then do some financial forecast, and you will then send us your forecast and some financial information to us that we have requested in the call. We will then do some viability checks and eligibility checks to make sure that you are a going concern business as such. We will then issue you the grant offer letter. Once you get the grant offer letter, make sure that you're happy, sign it, send it back to us, and only then can you start your project. We have to note you cannot incur any costs before the start of a project or after it has ended. Okay, like I said, we will do some viability checks. This is to check that you are a viable business, that you have the money there to actually support and deliver this project. We will also do eligibility checks, which is just looking at the eligibility criteria of the competition to make sure you fit within those categories, that you're doing the right project length with the right size of business and such like, and lead. This is what's shown in the conditional offer letter. So this is various sections, I should say, including the amount of grant and the conditions you need to meet. But remember, there is an example letter on the FTP site, so you can go in and actually have a look, and you can start preparing earlier. Collaboration agreements, in our view, take the longest time to prepare. It can be anything up to 3 months to make sure that you've got all that information. So I would suggest you start that as early as possible, because your project cannot start unless you have a signed collaboration agreement in place. This is what feedback looks like. It won't be sent to you via email. It will be put into your FTP site. Whether you are successful or unsuccessful, you will receive your feedback. It's round about 4 weeks after we have notified you. The lead will have to go in and then disseminate it across to the rest of the consortium. I've already said about the collaboration agreement, so again, just to stress, please start it early because it can take an awful lot of time. I think I'm on my pretty much last slide now. Grants and payments. You've entered your costs, you're successful, and you're going to start your project with grant funding, but you need to be aware that we pay all the claims quarterly in arrears. So this can catch out small businesses, so just be very, very aware of the cash flow, because some projects can incur significant costs up front. Let's have a look. I've said this before as well. No cost can be incurred before the start of the project or the end, so just be mindful of that. That was such a quick whiz through everything, and I do apologise, but please do make full use of all this information is on the website. So if you go into the How to Apply tab, you get all the questions, all the guidance. Use Innovate UK website, you will get the project finance guidance. You can pull that down there. If anyone does have any questions after today that we haven't answered or I haven't answered, please do make full use of our customer support services. They are there to help. They will completely audit, like I think Alice said, that we have 24 hours to come back to you, otherwise they are shouting at us. So please make full use of that. So sorry about that. I think you all look shell-shocked. I've said so much information all at once.
No, that's smashing, Julie. Thanks very much. So we've got plenty of time for Q&A. So specifically for Julie on this one. So can we go to Jonathan first, please?
Thank you, Ray. Julie, we've got 50 people watching online.
Oh.
And they're all very interested in this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask, I've got 4 questions. The first is, I'm sure this is very important, but somebody's asked, which version of Excel is the partner finance form in?
Do you know what? I don't actually know what version of Excel.
Okay.
I think it's 2003, isn't it? 2013 or something? But it is on the FTP site. So they go into the FTP site, they find the form. If it's not compatible with what they've got, just give us a call. Email customer services and we'll sort something out. We will make sure they'll be able to put it in the correct format, don't worry.
Great, thank you. Next, are royalty fees payable for UK patents eligible costs?
I don't know is the answer to that, I'm afraid. I actually do not know the answer to that one. I would again suggest going to customer services, put that in writing, and then we'll make sure that you get a good answer back.
Thank you. Can match funding be obtained after the grant offer?
No. No, you need to show that you have that match funding in place, and that's part of the viability check. So our project finance team will actually make sure that you have the funds where they've come from and that they are available to start the project.
Thank you. And are costs for business support, including consultants, eligible costs?
Say that again. For the business support?
I'll read it as written rather than my interpretation. Can costs for business support, including consultants for business, be included even if a subcontractor?
You can include consultancy. You can. I don't know if they're two different questions in actual fact. The business support has to be involved, has to come into the other costs, and that's something that Alice and her team have put in the competition. I don't know if that... Will it include consultancy for you in that? But on my side, if you do want to include consultancies, yes, they can go in subcontract.
So yeah, if you're looking at the 10K for business support, Basically, as long as you've got a good reason what it is and what it's going into, we're okay to pay it. The reason that's there is because we appreciate the fact that we give a lot of money out to do R&D, but actually that business support and looking at kind of business growth plans and things like that are as equally as important. So yes, if you're getting a consultant in to look at that for you, that should be an eligible cost. Any questions, just come and write a letter of support and wing it to us and we'll confirm, give you a formal kind of confirmation that that's in scope.
Thank you. That's all from online.
Sorry. Just before we start the Q&A, something I was remiss in actually mentioning. Can you please state your name and your organisation, particularly for the benefit of the people in the room so they know who you are and they might want to talk to you later. But it was picked up on our webcast, and I usually say this with the roving mic, so there was people on the webcast saying, who's that guy asking the question? So they very much perhaps want to meet up with you. So apologies for that, but name and organisation, please.
Hi, my name's John Cloak. I'm the National Network Manager for the Low Carbon Energy for Development Network. It might sound like a bit of well, it's an important issue. As we all know, the pound is on the slide at the moment, and I think we can all guess that in the build-up to Brexit in March, the value is likely to become a lot lower, possibly. I'm just wondering if you could put in a budget application in September, which is completely out of kilter with the value of the pound by that stage. This is, I mean, I know this, you talked about you can't allow for inflation and so forth, but this is a fairly unusual set of circumstances. So I'm wondering is there any provision for offsetting radical reductions in the value of the pound at all, or is it just you take what you get?
Not from my side, no, because no one knows what is actually going to happen, so I've not had any directive at all. At the moment, you just put it in as fair market cost. Sorry. And what I would suggest, would you mind putting that in writing, sending that to customer service, and then I can take it to someone who may have a bit more information. And if I... It can be. I agree. It's not something I'm aware of at the moment that we're taking or planning to do anything different. But what I can do is find an answer for you, and then I will put any answers I get from this session up onto the FTP site, so you'll be able to see the answer that I give this gentleman from that question. Is that all right?
Hi, Ruth Sayers from Faradian. So this is all kind of fairly standard in terms of typical applications for Innovate UK when they're UK-based partners, but how is the approach if you have a partner that is, for example, South Asian-based? Is it the same partner finance forms? Is it the same?
Yes, sorry, if I didn't state that enough. Yes, exactly the same partner finance forms. We won't be funding them directly. It is through the lead.
Yep,
So you have to make sure it's shown in the finance summary form. They need to fill in a project finance form and make sure they put that in the system, not the system, in the FTP site as well.
Okay.
Showing their costs clearly.
So if they're being funded through the lead,
yes.
What percentage of grant do they get in terms of whether the size of they are a different size to the size of the lead?
Exactly the same as the lead.
Okay.
So it will be.
So it depends on the size of the lead as to the size of the grant.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
My question is, does a university need to register an SME in order to participate? A university, do they need to register an SME in order to participate in this? You didn't get my question.
So if you're a university and you want to lead,
yes,
you would have to be a UK business. So as an academic, you can't lead. If you want to be involved as a partner, that's it, it's fine. You can be a university, either UK or overseas, and be a partner in this competition, but you just can't lead it. So you don't have to register as an SME if you're an academic, if you want to apply as an academic into the competition as a partner. It depends on how you want to apply, depends on how you're registered.
Can you give me an example, maybe, because I'm from the university environment?
So I am Exeter University, is where I went, and I want to apply into a competition, so I have to find a UK business, or if I'm applying as an early stage, a UK RTO or a UK SME to lead. Or Exeter University has a business arm, because most universities do now. So they could apply as a UK business into the competition, and that means they could lead a mid or a late stage competition as a project. But it means that they don't get 100% funding because they're applying as a UK business. So it just changes the amount of grant they can get. So that's the same with RTOs. Most RTOs have a business arm. They can apply as a business or as an RTO, but they have to put it in right in the forms, and it changes the level of grant they're allowed to receive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just one from the webcast while Naz goes to the back of the room. Somebody online has a round 5 project that runs to March 19. Partners will have outstanding claims. Can they still apply for round 6? And I think you covered this. But
I would say yes.
Yes, you can still
Yes,
apply.
you
but
can.
You can ask for. You can't do an extension to a project that's already going on, but you can do the next piece of work, so the equivalent of an extension. So that's fine. You can apply. You've got round 5 project, and it's still live.
Mike Mason from Tropical Power. I'm a bit of a neophyte here, and it sounds terrifying, frankly. Not quite sure whether I like this or not. But I've got two big problems. One is, if we're doing some R&D, how do I know what it's going to cost at the level of detail that you're trying to ask for? Because you might have 2 or 3 generations of tooling. You don't know whether the first one will work or not. So I'm struggling a little bit with how we meet the balance between the predictability that you're looking for and the uncertainty from research. And the other is a more practical question. In Kenya, VAT is theoretically recoverable, but the government has never repaid it. So does it count as recoverable or not? You can only reclaim it against sales, and if you're in an R&D project, you're not going to make any sales.
Right, second question first. No idea, don't think so. We'll find out. Unless you... Nope, we don't know.
Customer service, please.
In terms of the first one, yes, this is a problem we have with R&D funding. We're asking you to predict something which you don't know what's going to happen yet. We're sorry, it's kind of the way the entire of Innovate UK and the R&D system works. We are asking for you to put what you think you're going to spend in and the categories in which you think it's going to happen. And then we're going to contract you to say you're going to do it. And then the likelihood is something is going to change, and we're going to have to do a project change request and change the allocation of funding. The thing we can't change is we can't give you more money. So you have to put in, and this is where your risk element comes into it, is how are you managing the risks of your project? What are your risks? How are you mitigating them? And do you have budget to mitigate them if you need to? So you can't apply for too much more money than you actually think you need, but you can apply for the money to negate the risk that you think is there. And then if it all goes wrong, you can shift money around to try and fix it as your project develops. We accept that, we accept project change requests, but what we're asking for you is to put what you think you need in. Does that answer it?
Sort of, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I know it's an issue.
I mean, it's odd to have Innovate and predictability both in the same
Yeah,
sentence.
we have to manage our budget to plus or minus 1% on things that constantly change. We are with you on the pain. We understand it.
Sorry, it's Tristan Egan from the University of Oxford. Are your allocation of resources and the pathways to impact, are they assessed by your 5 independent assessors?
No, they're not.
Who reads them?
Oh, sorry. Sorry?
So who reads them?
Innovation leads. Innovation lead will read it.
Okay, but it's not part of the assessment process?
It's not part of the assessment process.
Thank you.
Luke Burris from Mobile Power. If I was in the mid or late stage application, I would need to be a business to lead.
Yes, you would.
And
No, if you were early, you need to be SME. You can work by yourself.
Yeah.
Or you have to be an RTO can lead, but you must be collaborative.
Yeah.
If you're mid or late, you must be a UK business to lead.
So UK business, and that requires 30 or 50% match funding.
30% match funding.
30% match funding.
Yes.
But obviously, if I was working in collaboration with an RTO or a third sector organisation, their section of that funding would need to provide no match. So let's imagine I applied for £1 million. I'd need £300,000 match funding in total.
Yes.
But the element that was of work that was then being being done by an RTO or a third sector organisation, they wouldn't need to provide match for their section of it, or how does it? I'm confused about the match funding.
It's for
effectively.
the total, no, they don't have to, they'll get 100% costs, RTOs. If you come in as an RTO, they get 100%. That's if they come in as a research organisation. If they come in as a business, they come in as a large business, and they can get 50%. But the total, what we're talking about is participation, is the total project cost. So your project is, I'll just say 100,000, it's easy for my brain, 100,000. And you as a business will be entitled to 70% of that. The research organisations of the total project cost will be entitled to 30%. I can see you're confused. It's a real difficult one to explain.
So you've got partners. So say 100k, you're applying for 50k, your partner's applying for 50k. You're applying as an SME, so you're allowed 70%. You're allowed 70% funding of that 50k. The academic is allowed 100% funding of that 50k.
That makes it clear. Thanks.
See, that makes it so much clearer. Yeah.
Those in separate corners of the room. There'll be one over there.
Steve Koo from Tidal Harness. Given that international partners are encouraged in this competition, can we actually spend material costs on suppliers abroad rather than UK suppliers? In other words, can I buy materials from South Asia, which is much cheaper than the UK, or even subcontractors from abroad?
Do you think if they justify it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a quotation? Is there a
So
ratio?
traditionally, if you've applied for an Innovate UK grant before, it tends to be that everything has to be done in the UK because we're trying to create UK economic benefit. As was already pointed out earlier, there is less. That is still a core of what Innovate UK are doing. The money is from DFID, so actually it's about facilitating the energy access. Therefore, you're allowed international partners from anywhere in the world, and so actually there is a bit more of that flexibility.
Bakr Bahaj, University of Southampton. I'm just talking about the money now. So we have 10 million. We've got two, 3, and 5. And the division between the scientific excellence and the next one, which is about collaborative research and the bioenergy. How are you going to divide this in relation to projects? And how are you going to stick to 2 million for scientific excellence? Or are you going to have variability between all those activities that you're going to have?
So the process for allocation of funding is fun for this one. What we do is we get the 5 independent assessors to look at your 10 questions and the scope of energy trilemma. They'll decide whether you've answered the trilemma question good enough to be in scope, and they will score your 10 questions. So that becomes 1 score in terms of your technology. Then you're going to get a second score because the Carbon Trust are going to be looking at whether you're in scope for T, because they know the T programme best, and whether you've answered that gender question appropriately. And then that'll be scored in or out. Then they'll get ranked from high to low, and then there'll also be a ranking in terms of who is looking at T the best and gender the best. So they'll get scored 1 to 5. And then we will basically start looking at who is eligible for each one. So have they hit the trilemma, and are they in scope for T? Then, this is where the fun bit comes in, we will start looking at going which ones are eligible for which bits of funding. So we know which ones T are eligible for because we've scoped it. EPSRC will then go through every single project that look like they could be funded and say, yes, we can fund that academic because it meets our scientific relevance. So then we get one list, and then we look at bioenergy and go through and go, which ones will we fund on bioenergy? And then basically we go from the top and use the rest of the T money to fill it in until we run out of money. I mean, that is a complicated process. It's going to take us a couple of weeks, yes, but it is how we're going to do it, and we've done it before.
I mean, obviously, you'll be oversubscribed in any case.
Yes. Well, I'm hoping so. Otherwise, we haven't done our job properly.
Well, in a way, you're just basically wasting all our time, because if you don't have enough budget and there are really good projects around, how are you going to make sure that you get the top ones
Because they're going to be assessed.
Which are perhaps in the 5 million region compared to the ones who are lower, perhaps, and can't qualify for the 2 million region, for example.
So the money will all be allocated as one. It's just the point that we will be scoring. We always score the highest, kind of from 100% down. So it goes down in rankings. It's just the fact that we are working off multiple ranking lists because of the fact that there are 3 different areas that we're looking at in terms of trilemma and technology, in terms of T, and in terms of gender. So basically, we're just combining those together to make one ranking list, and then working out how to get the most use of the money that we've got in terms of making sure we're spending 3 million on bioenergy. But it could mean that because of bioenergy, because we've got this much money to spend on bioenergy, a bioenergy eligible project could score less than, say, something that would only get the money out of T. Does that make sense? So if it's in scope for bioenergy, because we've got more money of it, it could score 80%, and yet the lowest ranking score of what we can fund under the T and the EPSRC money goes to 85, because we were making sure that we're spending the money that we've got. So it's complicated, but we basically, we spend a long time working out how we can portfolio manage it to get the best technology, the best T, the best gender with the money that we've got.
So you're going to educate your assessors, I presume?
Yes, we'll be allocating assessors by technology area, ensuring that we have people that are aware of not only kind of project management and things like that, but international partners as well. It is in hand, it's just quite a complicated process.
Luke Burris from Mobile Power again. Could you give some examples of the difference between what you're calling materials and what you're calling capital equipment?
I can't say I can, to be honest. What I would do is go on to Innovate UK project finance guidance and have a look, and they've got everything listed out there. If you are concerned about the difference, please send it into customer services. I would hope that you would know it. Yeah. Sorry.
There's also a finance guide online which lists what each one means.
Oh, that's what that's what I meant. The project finance guide is Innovate UK. Go on the website, project finance guide, and you will see everything listed.
Thanks.
Mike Mason again from Tropical Power. You talk about partners, collaborators, leads, and so on. And where does a subsidiary fit? So we have a subsidiary in Kenya, which probably employs 95% of our total number of people, but we're a UK registered company and we're definitely an SME. Would they be a partner? Would they be a subsidiary? Would they be a contractor? What would they be? How do they fit into this firmament, please?
Oh, blimey, you're asking the complicated questions today, aren't you?
Well, it's the real world that I live in.
It depends on how you want to apply for this. So because you're a UK registered SME, you can apply as a UK registered SME, and yet if they're based abroad, that's fine as long as they're on the UK payee system. If they're not on a UK payee system, you'll have to apply as a subsidiary or as a partner or in that country as long as they're registered. You can also theoretically, I think, apply and send the money to a subsidiary. It's all workable. It just depends how you want to set it up. And depends on how the state aid kind of regulations address it, is set it up to you. Does that make sense?
If you're scoring us on international collaboration,
we are not scoring on international collaboration.
Okay, so it doesn't particularly matter one way or the other.
We're highly encouraging them because we want you guys to get in country and actually do impact on the ground. That's the reason we're doing it, but we haven't made it mandatory because we know there's companies like you that exist that are UK but actually have very good links in country. So we thought it was actually adding to the complication rather than solving it. So we're trying to benefit, but all we're saying is work has to be done in country. So one of your work packages is going to have to clearly state that, otherwise you're not in scope.
Craig Jameson from Straw Innovations. The academic partners, are they, if they're in the Global South, in South Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa, can they still get money from the EPSRC? Or if they can't fill in the JES Are they ineligible? They've got to get the DFID money.
As far as I'm aware, EPSRC can't fund international. But I need to confirm that because I didn't preempt that question. But as far as I'm aware, the EPSRC are the because they're a UKRI, they have to fund UK academics. Hence why we would then fund that under the DFID money. Is that right? Wait a minute, Ed's got some clarification on it. I say clarification.
I would have thought that if it's a university overseas with no UK universities involved, it would have to come via the DFID money. If it's a university but there's also a UK university involved, then I think the money could be routed through the UK university to then pay the other university as a partner of the UK university. I'm pretty sure that's what's happened on some of the other projects, I think.
Any more questions? Naz, there's just one here.
Can I just add to John Cloak here from the Low Carbon Energy for Development Network again? Can I just add to what Ed's saying there? Some of you have worked with us before, and maybe on our membership database, and some of you will never have heard of us before. We would like to pick up cards from all of you before you leave. But what we can also offer as a facilitating platform is if you don't have academic contacts, I'm assuming a lot of you will, but some of you won't, then we can help you with that. And if you want to be part of an RTO, but you don't have the collaborators to do that, we can help you with that. So we're happy to act as a kind of facilitating organisation to build you into the block that you might like to be. And we can also help with some, at least, of the trickier questions to do with the bid application process, because we tend to work quite closely with KTN. We're not going to replace them or customer services, but at least do come and talk to us if there's anything you need that we can help with from that RTO point of view or from the research point of view.
Time for perhaps one more question, unless we're all hungry. No, one more question then.
Hi, Andrew Stokes, Energy Systems Catapult. Hopefully a simple question. Can an organisation be involved in more than one application, and if so, how many?
Yes, as many as you like, that's fine.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks
very much, ladies.
Right this way.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going the wrong way.
Right. Okay, just before we break for lunch then, so we'll bang on time. Lunch will be for 1 hour, so we want you back in the room for 1:45. Before we break, just a reminder, if you'd like one-to-one sessions with Innovate UK or KTN or LCEDN, then please see Natasha, because we need to book you in a slot, and Natasha will tell you where those meetings will be this afternoon. In terms of give-get cards, if you've registered for this event, you would have received from Natasha a give-get card. So please don't forget to complete those. Some of them are over on the table there, so please take time over lunch and the breaks to have a look at those. Anyway, on the webcast, so some people on the webcast were asking, how can I complete a give-get card? Natasha will be sending out to those who've registered on the webcast a form to complete, and then you will be able to send those in. The information that goes out probably early next week, you'll have a link to a Dropbox system. All the slides, all the information will be there together with all the give-get cards. So, but really, it's up to you to keep on revisiting that, because people might be putting in more information. So I would suggest that you look at that Dropbox on a regular basis, particularly if you're looking for more partners. I think that's it for now. So please enjoy your lunch, have plenty of networking, and we'll see you back in the room at 1:45. Thank you.